Girlfriend stole my company and married my cousin when my family disowned me. They thought I was done, but I'm back for revenge. It was a chilly Tuesday morning when the unthinkable happened. I was sitting at my desk, coffee in one hand and scrolling through emails with the other, when I stumbled upon a message that looked like every other corporate announcement, until I read the subject line, "Notice of termination." My heart skipped a beat. Surely this had to be a mistake. I opened the email, hoping for some clarification, but the message was blunt and impersonal. "We regret to inform you that your employment with Morgan Thompson Group will be terminated effective immediately. Please contact HR for details regarding your separation package." My stomach turned. How could I be laid off? I helped build this company from the ground up. Panic twisted inside me like a knife. Frantically, I fired off a text to Susan. She wasn't just my girlfriend of 5 years, she was a founder too. She'd know what was going on. My message was simple. "HR says I'm out. What's going on?" The reply came back almost instantly, but it wasn't the reassurance I'd hoped for. "Charlie, it's true. The board has decided to go in a different direction. We need to talk." Different direction? We had just been talking about expanding into new markets last week. What had changed so suddenly? The message was cold, too formal. Nothing like how Susan usually spoke to me. Something was off. Determined to get some answers, I didn't waste any time. I grabbed my coat and headed out, bypassing bewildered looks from colleagues who'd probably seen the same email about my layoff. As I walked out, whispers followed me, each one a stab of betrayal. I reached the hotel where the company was hosting a lavish event that evening. An odd choice for a company supposedly cutting costs. The lobby was buzzing, filled with chatter and the clinking of glasses. I spotted Susan on stage, radiant and confident, addressing a crowd of eager listeners. She was painting a rosy picture of the company's future, promising growth and prosperity. It felt surreal. My anger simmered as I made my way through the crowd. The air crackled with tension as people started to notice me. Their expressions ranged from sympathetic to outright scornful. I didn't care. All I wanted was to confront Susan. As I reached the stage, her smile vanished, replaced by a cold glare. "Security," she snapped, her voice cutting through the murmur of the room. How did this riffraff get in? Ignoring the sting of her words, I demanded, "Susan, why am I laid off?" The question hung heavy in the air. Whispers rippled through the crowd, laced with mockery. "He really thinks he's the boss, huh? How does he have the nerve to talk like that?" Someone muttered under their breath. "Yeah, just a guy who relied on his girlfriend. Wearing a suit doesn't make you important," another voice chimed in. My blood ran cold. I'd always prided myself on keeping a cool head, but this blatant disrespect was infuriating. Susan, aware of the murmurs, spoke in a clipped tone, her words slicing through the tense air. "That's right, Charlie. You've been fired, and you are no longer welcome here." Her voice turned steely. "As we move towards an IPO, we need to streamline operations. You, unfortunately, are no longer a part of that vision. But everyone else," she continued, her voice taking on a saccharine sweetness, "raises and promotions are coming your way." Cheers erupted from the crowd, a stark contrast to the icy knot forming in my stomach. Security guards, summoned by Susan, started toward me. As I was ushered out, a cowardly kick landed on my leg from behind. A woman's voice, dripping with disdain, echoed in the hallway. "Just a freeloader. Good riddance. At least Susan's got brains without him weighing her down. She'll make a fortune." Outside, the winter air was a cold mirror to my own heart. Susan and I had built Morgan Thompson Group from scratch after graduation. I had poured my blood, sweat, and tears into this company. Now, because I lacked shares and held only a facade of power, I was expendable. Laid off from the company I had helped create, there was no way I was leaving without answers. The next morning, the company felt like a stranger's territory. My office, once a space that hummed with my energy, was now occupied by someone else. In the corner, a few boxes awaited me. Inside were my laptop, framed photos, and the remnants of my professional life. Pushing open the door, I found my cousin, Peyton Morgan, lounging in my chair, a smirk playing on his lips. "Rough morning, Charlie?" he greeted with a mocking lilt. Ignoring him, I strode towards the boxes, my eyes catching the incriminating picture frame he was toying with, the one with me and Susan. "Congratulations on your eviction," he drawled, leaning back in the chair with a theatrical sigh. "Or maybe I should congratulate you on your ex finding a new plaything." His words ignited a spark within me, and before I could stop myself, my fist connected with his jaw. A yelp escaped his lips, followed by a flurry of curses as he clutched his reddening face. Despite the pain, his arrogance remained intact. In fact, he seemed to think this was all I could do, now that I was desperate. "Nice one, Charlie," he sneered. "You've got nothing left now. Let's see how you fend with empty pockets. A cold anger settled over me. Someone with nothing to lose has nothing to fear from someone who has everything to protect, I countered, leaving him spluttering in the stolen chair. The whispers that greeted me as I walked through the corridors felt like a swarm of hungry mosquitoes. If they enjoyed gossip so much, maybe I should have fired half of them when I had the chance. I thought bitterly, storming toward Susan's office, kicking the door open with a resounding bang. Susan, startled, whirled around, her face a mask of fury. "What do you think you're doing? Still think you own the place?" I took a deep breath, trying to control the storm brewing within. Now was the time to start taking back what was mine. And it all started here. As I stood there in Susan's office, the anger and shock still pulsing through my veins, I realized that this was more than just a professional betrayal. It was personal. Susan's eyes were cold, a sharp contrast to the warmth they used to hold for me. It felt like I was looking at a stranger. "You don't belong here anymore, Charlie," she said, her voice firm and devoid of emotion. "It's best you leave now." I stormed out, my mind racing. The drive home was a blur, each mile adding to the weight of betrayal that settled like a stone in my stomach. How could Susan do this to me? How could she align with Peyton of all people? And to think, just last week, we were talking about wedding plans, about a future together. It didn't make any sense. When I got home, the solitude of my apartment was a stark reminder of the loneliness that awaited me. The walls seemed to close in, suffocating me with the reality of my situation. I was out of a job, out of a relationship, and seemingly out of options. Later that evening, I couldn't shake the need for answers, so I drove back to the hotel. The party was over, but the cleanup crew was still there, moving through the now empty halls like ghosts. I needed to see the betrayal for myself, to understand the full scope of the treachery. Hidden behind a column, I watched as Susan and Peyton exited the ballroom, laughing, their arms linked. The sight was like a punch to the gut. The laughter, the intimacy. It was all too much. They didn't notice me as they headed towards the hotel bar, their smiles too bright, their conversation too light. I followed at a distance, my heart pounding in my chest. I watched as Peyton pulled out a chair for Susan, the gesture so familiar yet so foreign. They ordered drinks, their heads close together, sharing secrets and plans that no longer included me. The bartender handed them their drinks, and as they clinked glasses, Peyton said something that made Susan throw her head back and laugh. That laugh, I had loved that laugh. But now, it was a sound that would haunt me. The reality of their relationship, of their betrayal, was too much to bear. I left the hotel, the images of their togetherness burning in my mind, fueling a fire of resolve within me. They thought they could crush me, leave me with nothing. They were wrong. Over the next few days, the news of my firing spread like wildfire. My phone was inundated with messages from colleagues, some expressing sympathy, others curious about the drama. Among the flood of notifications, one message stood out. It was from a former mentor, someone who had left the company a year ago due to similar shady dealings. His words were a cold comfort. "The snakes show their true colors in the end. Keep your head up, Charlie." As I pondered my next moves, the reality of my situation began to sink in. Susan and Peyton were not just content with taking my job and my dignity, they were aiming for total destruction. Peyton, now officially my ex-cousin as far as I was concerned, had always been envious of my position at the company. And Susan, it seemed, had her sights set on more than just professional success. She wanted power, and Peyton was her ticket to it. The bitterness of the situation was overwhelming, but it also served as a catalyst. I was down, but not out. If they wanted a war, I would give them one, but not on their terms. I needed a plan, a way to turn the tables and come back stronger. In the midst of this turmoil, an unexpected call came. It was from another industry contact, someone who had heard through the grapevine about my departure. "Heard you're free these days," he said, a hint of opportunity in his voice. "Let's meet up. I might have something that could interest you." Grasping at this lifeline, I agreed to meet. Perhaps this was the break I needed, a chance to rebuild from the ashes of my former life. The meeting was set at a quiet cafe, away from the prying eyes of the corporate world. My contact, Mr. Harrison, was already there, nursing a coffee. He greeted me with a firm handshake and a sympathetic nod. "Rough deal you got there at Morgan Thompson," he began, his voice low. "But maybe it's a blessing in disguise. I'm starting a new venture, and I need someone with your expertise. Interested?" The offer was like a breath of fresh air, a chance to start anew. We talked for hours, hashing out details, planning strategies. By the end of the conversation, I had a new job, a new purpose. I was going to build something even bigger and better than what I had at Morgan Thompson. And this time, I would be in charge, with no Susans or Peytons to stab me in the back. As I left the cafe, a plan forming in my mind, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Susan and Peyton had made a grave mistake in underestimating me. They had taken my job and tried to take my dignity, but they couldn't take my spirit or my resolve. They thought they'd crushed me, left me with nothing. They were wrong. Now, I was back to claim everything they thought they had stolen. The company, the power, the revenge. And it all started with this new opportunity, this new beginning. As the sun set over the city, casting long shadows down the bustling streets, I felt the weight of the past days lift slightly. The battle was just beginning, and I was ready. After securing a new venture that promised a fresh start, I drove back to my apartment feeling a mix of relief and unresolved anger. The streets were quiet, mirroring the turmoil inside me, a turmoil that wasn't just about losing a job or a girlfriend, but about betrayal from those I trusted most. Back at my place, the silence was deafening. The walls of the apartment, once filled with laughter and dreams, now echoed back my solitary footsteps. It was here in this empty space that the full weight of the past week's events truly hit me. I slumped onto the couch, my head in my hands, trying to wrap my mind around the swift turn my life had taken. The next morning was tough. Waking up without a job to go to, no emails to check, no meetings to attend, it was a stark reminder of my new reality. I felt adrift, like a ship without a rudder, tossed about by waves of uncertainty and frustration. I tried to keep busy, to keep the dark thoughts at bay. I cleaned the apartment, did the laundry, anything to stay moving. But every task was punctuated with painful reminders of Susan and the life we had planned together. Every corner of the apartment, every item we picked out together, felt tainted. Later that day, as I was sorting through some old business cards, I came across Susan's. The sight of her name, her title next to mine, twisted the knife a bit deeper. In a fit of anger, I ripped the card to shreds. It was a small petty act, but it felt good. It felt like I was taking back a little control. But anger and petty revenges didn't fill the void for long. I needed to face what had happened head-on, to understand why. I needed closure. I picked up my phone several times, thumb hovering over Susan's contact, but each time I put it down again. I wasn't ready to hear her voice, not yet. That evening, I forced myself to go out for a walk, to get some air. The city was bustling around me, life moving forward unabated. Couples walked hand in hand, people laughed, the world kept turning. It felt unjust. How could everything just carry on when my world had stopped? As I walked, I passed the cafe where Susan and I had spent countless hours planning our future. The sight of it was like a punch in the gut. We used to sit by the window, laptops open, discussing strategies and dreaming big. Now, those dreams were dust. I kept walking, not really knowing where I was going. Eventually, I found myself at a small park we used to visit. I sat on a bench, the cold metal biting through my coat, and watched as a young family played nearby. A father tossed his daughter into the air, her laughter ringing through the air. It was a stark contrast to the silence of my apartment, the silence of my life now. It was there, on that cold bench, that the reality of my isolation truly sank in. I had lost more than a job and a girlfriend. I had lost my support network, my confidants, my future. The pain of that realization was overwhelming, and for the first time since this whole mess began, I let myself really feel it. The tears came then, hot and unchecked. I cried for what felt like hours, for everything I'd lost, for everything that had been taken from me. But as the tears dried and the initial wave of grief passed, a new determination filled me. I was down, but I was not out. I had been betrayed, yes, but I was still here. I was still standing, and I was angry. Angry enough to fight back. Angry enough to reclaim what was mine. I walked home with a new resolve. Susan and Peyton had tried to take everything from me, but they had underestimated my resilience. They thought they had left me with nothing, but they were wrong. I spent the next few days diving into the new opportunity Mr. Harrison had offered. It was hard, starting from scratch, but it was also invigorating. I was building something new, something mine, something that no one could take from me. After weeks of relentless work and networking, my new venture began to take shape. Each morning, I woke up with a purpose, fueled by the determination to not just rebuild, but to surpass everything I had lost. This wasn't just about a business comeback. It was about reclaiming my life and proving to everyone, especially Susan and Peyton, that I was far from beaten. I rented a small office in an unassuming building downtown. It wasn't much to look at, with its stark white walls and fluorescent lights, but it was mine. I set up my desk near the window, overlooking the busy street below, a constant reminder of the bustling world I was fighting to make a mark in again. My first major task was to solidify the team. I hired 2 interns, both fresh out of college, eager to make their mark in the tech world. Their enthusiasm was infectious, and it reminded me of myself when I first started. We spent long days and nights brainstorming, coding, and planning. We were building something from scratch, and the energy in the office was palpable. One morning, as I was reviewing our progress, my phone buzzed with an email notification. It was an invitation to a major industry conference, one where I had been a speaker the previous year. My heart skipped a beat. This was my chance to step back into the spotlight, to show the industry that Charlie Morgan was still a force to be reckoned with. Preparations for the conference consumed me. I worked on my presentation every night, refining my speech, making sure every slide was perfect. This was more than just a presentation. It was my public comeback, and I couldn't afford to miss the mark. The day of the conference arrived faster than I expected. As I stood backstage waiting for my turn to speak, my stomach was a knot of nerves. I peeked out at the audience, spotting several familiar faces. Industry bigwigs, former colleagues, even a few from Morgan Thompson Group. My hands trembled slightly, but I clenched them into fists, steadying myself. This was it. When my name was announced, I stepped onto the stage, the lights blindingly bright. I took a deep breath and began to speak. My voice was clear, confident. I talked about innovation, resilience, and the future of technology. With each word, I could feel the room's energy shifting. The audience's interest peaked. After the presentation, people crowded around to talk to me. Old connections were rekindled, and new ones were formed. Several attendees expressed interest in my new venture. It was exhilarating. The conference was a blur of handshakes, business cards, and promising discussions. By the end of the day, my phone was full of new contacts and potential leads. The comeback was in full swing. Back at the office, the mood was jubilant. I shared the success of the conference with my team, and we celebrated into the early hours of the morning. It felt like we were on the brink of something big, something transformative. Over the next few months, our hard work began to pay off. We secured our first major contract, a project that was not just lucrative, but also highly visible. It was the break we had been waiting for. The project was challenging, requiring all our skills and resources, but we were up for it. Every milestone we hit was a step away from my past failures and a step towards a brighter future. As our reputation grew, so did the business. We moved to a larger office, hired more staff, and began to attract attention from bigger players in the industry. It was a heady time. I often found myself working late into the night, driven by a mix of fear and excitement. Fear of failing again, and excitement at what we were building. One late evening, as I was leaving the office, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hesitant, I answered. It was a headhunter, representing a major tech company. They had heard about my recent success and were interested in discussing a potential acquisition. My heart raced. This was the big leagues. We arranged to meet for coffee the next day. As I sat across from the headhunter, listening to him outline their proposal, it felt surreal. Here I was, less than a year after being betrayed and ousted from my own company, discussing multi-million-dollar deals. The meeting went well, and as I walked back to my office, I couldn't help but smile. It was a vindication of all the hard work, the long nights, the doubts, and fears. I had made it back, not just to where I had been, but to somewhere better, stronger. That night, I stood by my office window, looking out over the city. The lights twinkled below, each one a reminder of the possibilities that lay out there. I thought about Susan and Peyton, about the hurt and betrayal. They had tried to break me, but they had unwittingly forged me into something stronger. I wasn't just back, I was better than ever. And as I turned from the window, back to the plans and projects that covered my desk, I knew that this was just the beginning. The real work, the real fight was still ahead. And I was ready for it, more ready than I had ever been. The next few weeks after the meeting with the headhunter were a whirlwind of activity. Our team expanded, bringing in new talent to manage the influx of projects that had begun to pour in. With each new client and successful project, my company was cementing its reputation as a rising star in the tech industry. One morning, as I was reviewing project reports in my now much larger office, I received an email that caught me off guard. It was an invitation to an exclusive industry gala, typically reserved for the heavyweights of the tech world. The kind of event where deals were made and futures were decided over hors d'oeuvres and champagne. Being included in this was a sign that I had truly arrived back on the scene, not just as a survivor, but as a contender. As the gala approached, I prepared meticulously. This wasn't just another networking event, it was my reintroduction to the elite, many of whom had witnessed my fall. I chose my attire carefully, a sharp modern suit that signaled confidence without ostentation. I was ready to face the past, including any encounters with those from Morgan Thompson Group. The night of the gala, the venue was spectacular, bathed in soft light, with live music setting a celebratory tone. I mingled, exchanged pleasantries, and gradually made my way through the room. The conversations were light but laden with opportunities, each handshake a potential gateway to new ventures. Halfway through the evening, I spotted Susan and Peyton from across the room. They were as poised as ever, Peyton with his charming smile and Susan with her calculated grace. Watching them, a part of me recoiled, remembering the pain. But another part of me, the part that had fought back from nothing, felt a surge of triumph. Here I was, on my terms, successful despite their schemes. I made a decision not to avoid them. Instead, I walked directly towards them, my approach confident. Their smiles faltered slightly as I neared, a clear sign they hadn't expected to see me in such a place, at least not so soon. "Charlie," Susan greeted, her voice neutral but her eyes wary. "Peyton," I nodded, offering my hand, which he shook after a brief hesitation. "You look well," Peyton managed, his tone attempting casual friendliness. "I feel well," I replied, my gaze steady. "The new venture is thriving. It's amazing what fresh starts can lead to." Susan's smile tightened. "That's good to hear. We've heard great things." "Thank you," I said, excusing myself with a polite nod before they could extend the conversation. I didn't need their validation, but facing them, seeing the surprise and perhaps a hint of unease in their eyes, felt like a small victory. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of success. I left the gala with a handful of promising business cards and a sense of accomplishment that went beyond the professional. I had faced my past, and I had not just survived, I had thrived. The next day at the office was filled with a buzz of energy. News of my encounter with Susan and Peyton had spread among the team, and it seemed to bolster everyone's spirits. It wasn't just about the business, it was about us, as a team, rising from the ashes and proving ourselves. We continued to push forward, and as we did, the scope of our projects grew. We were no longer just a startup, we were a key player in the tech field. Our success caught the eye of several large corporations, leading to talks of partnerships and even acquisition offers. Each offer was considered carefully. I was not about to make any hasty decisions that could lead us back into a scenario like before. This time, I was in control, and I would ensure that whatever decisions were made would benefit not just me, but all those who had trusted me with their careers during this comeback. During one particularly intense negotiation session, I realized how far I had come. I was no longer the naive co-founder from Morgan Thompson Group. I was a seasoned CEO, aware of the pitfalls and potential of big business deals. As summer turned into fall, our company not only survived but thrived, expanding our reach and doubling our revenue. The feeling of walking into the office, knowing that every decision, every project, every success was a testament to our hard work and resilience, was exhilarating. One particularly crisp fall day, I received a call from an old industry friend who had become a mentor. "Charlie, I just wanted to say, watching you bounce back and then some, it's been nothing short of inspiring," he said. His words made me pause. Yes, I had come back, but more importantly, I had transformed a setback into the foundation for something bigger, something better. As I looked out of my office window, the city sprawled below, bustling and vibrant. I realized that this view, this moment of quiet triumph, wasn't just a personal victory. It was a signal to everyone who had ever doubted or betrayed me. I hadn't just returned to the game, I had changed it. And as the seasons changed, I knew one thing for certain. The best was yet to come. I was not just rebuilding what I had lost, I was creating something that would last, something that would outshine my past, and something that no one could ever take from me again. As my company continued to flourish, gathering momentum with each successful project and innovation, whispers began circulating in industry circles about the faltering performance of Morgan Thompson Group. The company that once seemed unassailable, the company that had unceremoniously pushed me out, was now struggling to keep its head above water. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, as I reviewed quarterly reports showcasing our latest achievements, my assistant informed me that Susan and Peyton had arrived unannounced. My initial surprise quickly gave way to curiosity. What could have driven them to show up at my doorstep, especially without prior notice? I instructed my assistant to show them in. As they entered my office, the contrast between their anxious demeanors and my calm composure couldn't have been starker. Gone were the days when they held the power to dictate terms. Now, they were in my world, and they knew it. "Charlie, thank you for seeing us on such short notice," Susan began, her voice lacking the confidence it once carried. Peyton looked equally uneasy, avoiding my gaze. "We'll get straight to the point," Peyton interjected. "Morgan Thompson Group is in trouble. We've hit a rough patch financially, and several of our key contracts are in jeopardy. We need your help." The irony of the situation was not lost on me. I leaned back in my chair, considering their words. Here they were, the architects of my past downfall, seeking salvation from the very person they had once discarded. "I see," I said slowly, letting the silence hang in the air for a moment. "And what exactly are you asking of me?" "It's simple," Susan replied. "We need an infusion of capital and expertise to stabilize the company. We're hoping you could provide that, maybe even co-manage some of our critical projects." Peyton chimed in. "We wouldn't come to you if we weren't desperate, Charlie. We believe this could be mutually beneficial." Mutually beneficial. The phrase echoed in my mind, a stark reminder of how they had used similar words when they needed my skills but not my presence. I pondered their proposal, the power dynamics now reversed. I took a deep breath and then spoke, my decision clear in my mind. "Susan Peyton, I built my company from the ground up after everything that happened. And now, you expect me to help save yours?" Their faces fell as they realized that this meeting might not go the way they had planned. "I have another idea," I continued, the words measured and deliberate. "Instead of propping up Morgan Thompson Group, I propose that we take over your remaining contracts. Your clients deserve stability and innovation, something you're clearly struggling to provide." The shock on their faces was palpable. Susan tried to interrupt, but I raised my hand to stop her. "You need a solution, and I'm offering one. This isn't just about business. It's about ensuring that the projects you can no longer handle continue to be managed effectively." I could see the conflict playing out in their expressions. This was not the help they had come for, but it was the only offer they were going to get. "We'll need to discuss this," Peyton said after a long pause. "Of course," I replied. "Take all the time you need, but remember, your clients and employees are waiting for a solution. I'm offering a way to ensure they don't suffer because of your mismanagement." As they left my office, a sense of profound satisfaction settled over me. This was not the vengeance of old grudges. This was the assertion of a new order. I had not just survived their betrayal, I had risen above it to a place where I could dictate terms. Over the next few days, negotiations took place. My team and I meticulously reviewed Morgan Thompson Group's contracts, assessing each for viability and fit with our current portfolio. It was a thorough process, ensuring that we only took on projects that would benefit from our intervention. Finally, the agreement was signed. My company would take over several key contracts from Morgan Thompson Group, effectively absorbing much of their operations. The news of the takeover made headlines, a stark depiction of how fortunes had changed. As I watched the news coverage, I felt a sense of closure. This was more than just a business maneuver. It was a symbolic end to the chapter that began with my dismissal. I had not only rebuilt my life, but had also ensured that the narrative of my career was one defined by resilience and strategic prowess. With this move, I had secured not only more business, but also a form of redemption. It was a testament to the fact that in the business world, it's not just about the falls you take, but how you choose to get back up. And now, standing at the helm of my thriving company, I knew that the best response to any setback was undeniable success.